G'day. You may have noticed that there are some people, particularly from the religious right, whose contribution to the marriage equality discussion could be described, at best, as disingenuous. This is the sort of thing that comes immediately to mind.
If we are prepared to redefine marriage so that it can suit this latest criteria, and the criteria is that two people who love each other should be able to get married irrespective of their gender, and if they're or if they're in a sexual relationship, what is the next step? There are even some creepy people out there, and I say creepy, who are afforded, unfortunately, a great deal more respect than I believe they should, who say that it's okay to have consensual sexual relations between humans and animals, will that be a future step?
This kind of nonsense comes in many forms. In this video, I'm going to look at one of the claims of an American activist who has entered the Australian discussion again, Katie Faust.
There's no dispute, right, that two men can have the same amount of love and commitment as a man and a woman. That's not the issue here, right? And if government's interest in marriage was adult feelings, then gay marriage would be totally okay. Government's interest in marriage is incentivizing mothers and fathers to commit to each other so children can grow up with both.
Here, Ms. Faust is being interviewed by an Australian by the name of Dave Pello. When I commented on his video that this claim is nonsense, Mr. Pello called me a hypocritical liar. The irony of his response is not lost on me, but it is quite typical of commentators of his kind. I can justify my claim that Katie Faust is being dishonest, but Mr. Pello is yet to demonstrate how my comment is false in any respect. I'll leave a link to the original video in the description below, and you can judge for yourself whether or not my comment was hypocritical or a lie. There are a couple of other really odious comments that this pair make during their interview. I'll touch on them briefly at the end. But first I want to debunk Ms. Faust's claim that the government's interest in marriage is incentivising parents to stay together for the sake of the children. Firstly, what exactly is this incentive to get married? What is the government offering? Generally speaking, when it comes to government intervention, we would expect to see some kind of financial incentive. So what have we got? In Australia, we have a couple of family-based payments. One is called the family tax benefit. This is described as a two-part payment that helps with the cost of raising children. You do not need to be married to receive these payments. In fact, the second payment, known as Part B, is specifically stated to be extra assistance for single-income and single-parent families. That is to say, you can actually get more money from the government if you are not married. Hardly an incentive to get married. The other main government payment to families is the child care benefit, to help with the cost of out-of-school hours care, preschool, kindergarten, etc. Again, nothing in the eligibility criteria mentions marriage at all. These payments are made to the child's primary caregiver, irrespective of marital status. I've not been able to track down a single government payment which discriminates in favour of married people. Also, as far as I'm aware, there are no tax benefits for married couples as compared with de facto couples, including same-sex couples. Our government is not incentivising marriage through any financial means that I could discover. If I've missed something here, feel free to correct me in the comments below. Searching through various other government sites, I have found nothing which indicates that our government is interested in incentivising parents to stay together so that children can live with both a mother and a father. On the contrary, it is quite apparent that the government acknowledges and accepts that relationships end and directs all its efforts towards minimising harm to children when this occurs. For example, the Family Law Act is legislation which focuses entirely on relationship breakdowns. It prioritises the rights of children and presumes equal shared parental responsibility irrespective of marital status. Our government also offers support services specifically for separated families, plus referrals to non-government services. There is no discernible emphasis on getting parents to become married nor to stay married. There are a few instances where the government will offer some generic tips on building better relationships, such as here on the Family Relationships online website. Plus referrals to agencies which may be able to help if you are experiencing relationship difficulties. But I think you would be hard-pressed to argue that this is evidence of the government incentivising marriage. All of the evidence which I could find indicates quite unequivocally that yes, our government puts a high priority on the rights and best interests of the child. But no, married parents is not a government priority when it comes to child welfare. I'll leave links to the relevant government websites below so you can check for yourself. So much for our government incentivising mothers and fathers to get and stay married. What about the legislation around marriage itself? Does our marriage legislation have anything to say about children? The Attorney General's website sets out the legal requirements for marriage, including that individuals must not already be married, they must be at least 18 years old or 16 years old with court approval, they must understand what marriage means and freely give consent, etc. Unsurprisingly, again, there is no mention of children. If our government's interest in marriage had anything at all to do with children, surely we should expect this to be stated among the legal requirements of marriage. For further clarification, we can delve into the Marriage Act itself. This is freely available, and I'll put a link in the description. The Marriage Act contains over 70 references to the word child or children. Most of these instances relate to issues of adoption and legitimacy. There are also a number of references regarding the marriage of a minor. Nowhere does that Marriage Act suggest that the purpose of marriage is to ensure that children live with both parents. Indeed, there is not any mention at all of any purpose for marriage. Our government simply does not have a position on this. So, far from being pro-marriage, our government appears to be, on all available evidence, entirely without bias when it comes to the issue of marriage as it relates to children. And this is as it should be. That is to say, our government does not incentivise mothers and fathers to commit to each other so that children can grow up with both. Or, in other words, Katie Faust is lying when she makes this claim. Not only is her statement disingenuous, it is deceitful. Unfortunately, this kind of tactic is typical of many of the individuals who are arguing against marriage equality. There appears to be no compunction in flat-out deception. But what is even more annoying than the deceitfulness itself is that this clear and blatant appeal to emotion,
"Won't somebody please think of the children?"
is not even relevant to the marriage equality discussion. And really, the foregoing was just a smokescreen for the main lie. Just have a listen to what Katie Faust goes on to say.
Government's interest in marriage is incentivizing mothers and fathers to commit to each other so children can grow up with both. Because when they don't, then we face all the major social ills that we're tackling today in America, like massive incarceration rates and cyclical poverty and rampant suicide and homelessness. All of those major social ills can go back to one factor, and that's fatherlessness.
Yeah. This is one of the main lines now being pushed by the regressive religious right. They claim that once we legislate to allow same-sex couples to marry, we will be deliberately creating fatherless children. In this same video, again, there's a link in the description below. I'm not making this stuff up. Dave Pello actually says this.
And essentially what we're doing now by redefining marriage and saying biological parents has nothing to do with marriage and family, we're essentially creating another stolen generation.
For those unaware, this term, the stolen generation, refers to those affected by the government policy throughout much of the 20th century of forcibly removing Indigenous children from their families. This policy is now a source of great shame and regret in Australia, and Dave Pello has the gall to claim that marriage equality would be essentially an equivalent outrage. I mean, I don't even have words to express how repulsive this statement is. When these people keep insisting that there will be significant consequences if we allow same-sex couples to marry, they are invariably inventing problems which are not supported by evidence nor reason. How is it even possible to enter into an honest discussion with these people when they are so willing to just make stuff up? All right, let's pull it back from the realm of insanity into the realm of pure baseline deceit. Faust and others like her claim that marriage equality will result in fatherlessness. What exactly are these people envisioning? Once we legislate to allow same-sex couples to marry, we're going to experience a gay apocalypse? There is going to be a mass exodus of fathers from previously stable families? A whole bunch of men are going to say, "Yeah, finally, I can have a crack at homosexuality. Thank God they changed the law so that now I can get in touch with my inner gay. Bye, family, I'm off to marry a dude." And as a result, generations of children are going to be left abandoned and traumatized? Seriously? For a long time now, we have seen people leave heterosexual relationships once they acknowledge that they themselves are not truly heterosexual. For even longer, we have seen people leave heterosexual relationships for other heterosexual relationships, or for no relationships at all. These decisions are individual life choices, based on personal preferences. They have not been informed by the Bloody Marriage Act. Humans simply do not form their relationships on the basis of government legislation. That is to say, when children are impacted by changes to their family structures, this has nothing at all to do with the Marriage Act. So, how is it possible that a change to the Marriage Act could have a detrimental impact on children? It simply can't. This is a bloody-minded deception. Katie Faust has a long history of perpetrating this particular lie. I'll talk about this a bit more in my next video. Until then, please use your brain.